I find that when you're doing God's work, Satan does everything he can to stop it. And that's a theme we see in a lot of passages of Scripture, but really in the book of Nehemiah, big time. Everything can be going well. People can be getting saved and getting baptized. But when that happens, when things are going well, you better believe Satan's going to step in. You better believe Satan is going to use anyone he can to destroy the work of God. He'll use anyone who will allow him to use them. He'll use you if you let him use you. He'll use bitter people. He'll use disgruntled people, angry people, and he'll do anything he can to stop the work of God. And you never know who it's going to be. You never know. Sometimes you're absolutely shocked at who Satan gets to. You think, not him, or not her. Satan knows what he's doing. And you're shocked by the tactics that up until that point, a person you knew seemed like a fairly decent person or a fairly godly person. Up until that point, you saw a certain character from a person, and then you see Satan jump in, and you're shocked at the tactics Satan will use through people. Well, the people of Jerusalem, they're trying to rebuild the city walls. And just a quick little reminder, we're keeping this little review short of Israel's history. 586 BC, Jerusalem falls. And so the city walls are destroyed, and the temple is destroyed. The people are taken into captivity. And then you see that they're allowed to come back. Now, I just put here Babylon falls to Persia, but within a year's time, Cyrus decrees that the people would come back. And about a year later, they really start working on the temple and that type of stuff. By 515, the temple gets completed. And now, in Nehemiah, it's about 445 and 444, and the walls of the city are in shambles. And what you have is the people being vulnerable and the temple being vulnerable. The temple's there, and people are coming and worshiping, but at any point, the enemy can come in and attack. Nehemiah is an influential Jew, and you might remember that he was formerly the cupbearer to the king. He had requested to come and rebuild the city walls. He's been allowed to come and rebuild them. And what we've seen so far in the first few chapters of Nehemiah is that Nehemiah is a man of God who knows the word of God, prays, and is a man of action. So he travels to Jerusalem, he inspects the city walls, he encourages the people to start preparing to build the wall, and things are going great. Until, once again, Satan steps in. Now, just to kind of review, just to give you a chance to wake up a little bit, who is the chief enemy? And I'm not looking for Satan here. Who is the chief human enemy of Nehemiah right now? Who's the main guy? There's two main guys. There's one kind of that's more prominent than the other. Who's the main bad guy? What's that? Sanballat the Horonite, which we believe he's from Samaria, which is up in the north. Who's the next bad guy? Tobiah the Ammonite. And then there was another one that maybe we don't think about all the time that showed up. Anyone remember his name? He's an Arab. Anyone remember? Geshem the Arab. Right. And then, of course, there's another group of people that they kind of recruited. Does anyone remember the other group of people? So you have the Samaritans, you have the Ammonites, you have the Arabs, and there's another group of people that have been recruited. The Ashdodites, or I would have accepted the sea peoples along the coastlines, like the old territory of the Philistines. So you basically have enemies on every side. And Sanballat, he hates what's going on. So he gathers up these enemies to try to help him stop the Jews. And he initially wants to discourage them from completing the wall, but that doesn't stop Nehemiah because Nehemiah prays and keeps working. And so Sanballat gathers his allies together and threatens to attack Jerusalem. I mean, you're seeing just kind of like the ante get upped a little bit. And Nehemiah hears about it, and he sets a round-the-clock guard, but the people get discouraged, and that's because opposition can be taxing. Opposition can be tiring and discouraging. And so the people right now are dealing with that. They're dealing with this continued opposition, but they press on. And the enemies press on as well. Look at Nehemiah 4, verses 11 and 12. Our enemies said, "They will not know or see until we come among them, kill them, and put a stop to the work." Like, listen, we're going to privately and secret, without them knowing, we're going to attack and, what's the word that's used here? Kill the workers. Now, if that doesn't show you who these people are, then nothing in this book will show you. These guys are murderers. They're willing to kill someone to stop the work on the wall. They don't want a wall, but it'll be a big wall, a beautiful wall, a huge wall. They don't want a wall. It kind of sounds like modern Democrats to me a little bit, right? But these guys here are absolutely evil murderers in heart. When the Jews who lived near them came and told us 10 times, "They will come up against us from every place where you may turn." So what you have here is you have certain Jews who hear what's going to happen. They find out about Sanballat's plan, and they go and they tell Nehemiah. Now, what would have happened if they didn't say anything? If they said nothing, then this plot may have been successful. It may have been. The work may have been stopped. And that tells me that if you know something evil that's happening, or you know something bad that's happening or has happened, and you keep your mouth shut, then you are complicit in the sin. It's like we teach all our kids, like, don't be a tattletale. And we understand, like, if a kid just sits and looks to try to get other kids in trouble and he's just trying to rat out everything, he's, every little thing. But something happens, and it's something fairly serious or whatever. And the kid knows what's happened and says nothing, he is complicit. What that means, kids, is you're guilty. You're as guilty as the people who did it. Because you saw it, you said nothing, or you knew it was going to happen and you said nothing and it happened. You could have stopped it from happening, but you didn't say anything. Then you're guilty. So the work might have been stopped if these guys didn't say anything, but God's hand is all over it. And when Nehemiah hears about it, he takes action. The first thing he does is protect the wall. Verse 13. Then I stationed men in the lowest part of the space behind the wall, the exposed places. And I stationed the people in families with their swords, spears, and bows. And so he isn't just going to sit there and pray and hope it all works out. He takes action. He stations armed men at the breaches in the wall. He puts them in visible places to deter an attack. And they're armed. Look, they're armed. He stationed the people with swords, spears, and bows. So he arms them. And that sends a message to anyone who would try to attack the city. Don't try it. Besides, they have the high ground. And we all know how important the high ground is. Well, anyway, so Nehemiah sets armed men at the breaches in the wall, and he encourages the people in verse 14. When I saw their fear, I rose and spoke to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people. Do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. So you really have, this is a descriptive passage, but there are principles here that are common sense principles. It's common sense stuff. So what you have is, first, a call to not be afraid. You have the basis of that call. Like, look who the Lord is. We have a great and awesome God. Don't be afraid. But then there's a call to action, to actually do something, to actually defend themselves. The people don't need to be afraid because they have a great and awesome and powerful God, and with His help, they can succeed. They can fight and protect their loved ones, protect their sons, their daughters, their wives, and their houses, which is a common sense understanding of protecting your family. We are responsible for protecting our families to a certain extent. Now, God would be with them because it's God's work. Nehemiah doesn't tell them, hey guys, let's just go have a prayer meeting and do nothing. Let's keep the breaches open and go have a prayer meeting, and hopefully the bad guys don't come in and kill our wives and our children. That's what some people would have you believe. Some people would have you believe that it's just like, listen, just go, and holier than thou, go sit in a room and pray somewhere, and if the bad guys come in and kill your family and kill your children, well, then I guess your prayers didn't get answered. It's like, no, there is a call here, a common sense call here to defend your family and your household. It kind of reminds me of a guy and a conversation a couple of years ago we had where a guy made the argument that the Bible forbids guns in church. And it was from some passage that had nothing to do with it. Of course, the Bible doesn't say anything like that. But he said, so you're saying that the Bible says that we should not have guns in church. And I was like, wait, what? What are you even talking about? I don't even remember the passage, but it had nothing to do with that. According to people like that, you just pray and do nothing. Well, what if Nehemiah prayed and did nothing? What would happen? I mean, Peter had a sword during the Last Supper. But the guy was arguing that if someone comes into your church with a gun and starts shooting up the place, just pray. And I said, no. Oh no. No. We can pray, yes. But we must also protect our wives and children. I don't know about you, but I'm not okay with Satan sending people in to murder my wives and children and your wives and children. Men, are you okay with that? Let's sit by like a bunch of losers while someone kills your family when you could prepare and actually take action. Who I was going to say, who agrees with me on that? Like, part of our responsibility as men is to protect when we can, when we have the capability of protecting our families. And that's what Nehemiah is. This is common sense stuff. So if someone ever came into this church with intent to kill, I better hope, and we could maybe edit this out later, I don't know, or maybe not. I better hope that if he comes in with one gun, or two guns, or three guns, there better be a whole bunch of guns pointing back at him. Because our families are at stake. And right now, it's a troubling time. Right now, for synagogues especially, because of what's going on between Iran and Israel, synagogues are being attacked by terrorists right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if churches be attacked by them, because there is a Shiite community in America that was let in. A lot of people were let in. And some of these people, one of these guys who attacked, I forget who he attacked. I don't remember if it was the Old Dominion or if it was a synagogue or what. But he was in jail for giving information to ISIS. And they let him out. I mean, what are you, crazy? You let these people out? Like, what do you think's going to happen when someone who is a sympathizer with ISIS is let out of jail? What do you think's going to ultimately end up happening? But people are really, really foolish. Nehemiah acts. And he calls the people to defend themselves and their families as they carry out God's work in rebuilding the walls. But he does trust in the Lord throughout the process, and he encourages the people, and the work continues. Look at verse 15. When our enemies heard that it was known to us and that God had frustrated their plan, then all of us returned to the wall, each one to his work. So Sanballat and his cronies, they find out that the Jews found out about their plan to kill and attack the city, to attack the city and kill people. And so they lose the element of surprise, and look at the language. God frustrated their plan. God stopped the attack from happening. How? How did God stop it from happening? Did he rain down stones and fire and ice on Tobiah and Sanballat and Geshem and the Ashdodites? I'm going to press pause on that answer for a second. Let's press pause on that and give someone else a chance. You are right, God knows everything. How did God frustrate this plan? Well, the first thing that happened was what? The plan was exposed. So this evil plan that people heard about went and told Nehemiah. So first, the plan was exposed. And second, Nehemiah took action. So Nehemiah set up a defense. So if he would have sat around and done nothing, then they may have attacked and killed people and stopped the work because they hate a wall. They don't want a wall. They don't want it. Kind of reminds me of, again, the Democrats. If they were in charge today, Sanballat and Tobiah would bring their armies in and slaughter the people. They would have. And that type of thing is happening in America today. There is a newer category of crime that's called migrant crime. Because you might remember Obama, Clinton, Obama. These guys had a policy of they wanted to have a closed border. This is kind of like a common sense thing. Even Hillary Clinton had argued for like a strict border. But as soon as Trump comes in, and these people hate this guy, they hate him so bad they can't even think straight. The Democrats hate Trump so bad that no matter what he says, they will do the opposite, no matter how logical it is. Even if he takes their very position, which he has on a number of things, they will then go and oppose it. But he takes the position of a wall, putting up a border wall, and they go crazy, and they want to stop that whole idea, and they call it's racist to have a wall now. Meanwhile, they're living in walled communities, and their doors. If you really believe that, then unlock your doors. If you really believe that we should have no borders, we should have open borders, unlock your doors and invite anyone to come in and live in your house. But they would never do that. They would never do that. And so it's now racist. It's a racist thing. And by the way, this is not the only thing. Like, you've heard about this the voter ID. The voter ID is racist because according to Schumer, what did Schumer say? He said something like, minority people are not capable of getting IDs. If I were a minority, I would be insulted. You're telling me that I don't have $40 to get a license? You're telling me that I'm so stupid and I'm so incapable that I can't spend $40 to get a license? That's racist. That's racist. They're the racist. But anyway, sorry. It's not what this passage is about. But there is a wall. But there is a wall here, and now it's racist to close the border in America. But what ends up happening is when Biden opens up the wall, all these people come in. And all these people, there are a lot of criminals that came in. And we have a big problem on our hands. Well, Nehemiah understands that Jerusalem needs a wall in order to protect the people, in order to protect the city. This is just common sense stuff. And maybe in the ancient world, the Roman Empire didn't have a wall built around it because the situation was different. But the cities, every major city, almost every major town had walls built around it, or rivers around it to protect itself. So it's common sense stuff. It's common sense stuff. But anyway, God frustrated their plan, not through someone doing nothing and just praying in this particular instance. God frustrated the plan through the revealing, through someone hearing about it and then actually acting and doing something about it, telling people about it. And then the people who heard about it didn't just put their head in the sand and do nothing. They actually did something. They actually took action to protect the people. And the work continued, but the work changed. Check this out. The situation changed. Now they have to be prepared for incoming attacks. And before we read this, it reminds me of a conversation I had almost 20 years ago. Maybe over 20 years ago. Where I had said at a church meeting, a private church meeting, a leadership meeting, we need to be prepared for people who would come in and attack the church. And we might need to be prepared by having some type of people armed. And I was laughed at. That's a ridiculous idea. Now every church realizes the real problem that's coming, that people want to do harm. Well, the work changed. The situation changed here. In verses 16 through 18, from that day on, half of my servants carried on the work, while half of them held the spears, the shields, the bows, and the breastplates. And the captains were behind the whole house of Judah. Those who were rebuilding the wall and those who carried burdens took their load with one hand doing the work and the other holding a weapon. As for the builders, each wore his sword girded at his side as he built, while the trumpeters stood near me. And so the work continues, but now they need to be ready to defend themselves. And that may have slowed down the work a little bit because now they have to set up an armed force around them. And for some of those people are carrying loads in one hand and weapons in the other. And some of those people are carrying tools and now swords, ready to fight. And so they changed the way they have to do things. And they had to respond to a legitimate threat that was outside their walls. It changed the work. It's like today, when I was a kid, I don't remember locking the doors. Anyone remember not locking your front door at night? We keep our doors locked all day. Unless there's just like a screen door somewhere, maybe we won't do that one. But we keep let alone at night. Of course at night you're going to lock your door. But there was a day in this community, we're probably going back 30 or 40 years now, where you maybe didn't lock your door. You didn't lock your door at night?
Maybe we did. I just don't remember. It wasn't important.
It wasn't a big thing. Bob, what do you remember a day where you didn't lock your door at night? Or
When I was a kid, my parents would never lock the door. We lived in town.
you lived in town, you didn't lock it. Did you lock it at night?
I don't believe so. I mean, it was a lot different community.
Do you have your door locked during the day?
I do, yeah, now.
Yeah.
My alarm system too.
Well, that's the next thing. So now it's like you kind of have to have an alarm system, or I have cameras all over my house. I have every single entrance covered. And my phone gets a notification if someone walks by that entrance while I'm not home. So I even have a couple of cameras inside the house. Okay, so it's just kind of like where we are right now. We're in it, especially after they open. What kind of bonehead idea was that? Let's open the borders and let anyone in. I mean, that has to be one of the dumbest decisions in the history of America. But anyway, especially as our society's become what it's become, we had to change things. We have to start looking. My kids will take the dog out, and I'll walk by the back door and I'll be like, look at this, the door's unlocked. Come on, guys. And I'll double lock it. I hit what's the top lock called? The bolt lock. I'll hit the bolt lock and then I'll hit the other lock. Man, wide open. And I'll say, they left the door wide open. Now the door's not wide open. It's just not locked. That's where we are today. We have to protect ourselves. It's a different situation. And that's what happened here, where now they're in a situation where the workers can't just work. The workers have to actually prevent invaders. But the people of Jerusalem continue the work, and they're prepared for a fight at any time, in verses 19 through 21. I said to, and by the way, look at the end of verse 18. So they have trumpeters near Nehemiah. In case an attack does happen, then Nehemiah is going to be the first guy to find out about it, and he'll tell the trumpeters, they'll blow the trumpet, and everyone will know it's like sounding an alarm. So they have this is like the ancient version of an alarm system. All this stuff is in the Bible as just common sense stuff. Like, you shouldn't have to be taught this type of stuff. And if you do, you're kind of an idiot today. It's just the reality of it. Like, seriously? Common sense. Of course, we know that not every politician in America has that, but there's a large portion of them, almost half, that have no common sense whatsoever. Nehemiah 4:19 through 21. I said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, the work is great and extensive, and we are separated on the wall, far from one another. At whatever place you hear the sound of the trumpet, rally to us there. Our God will fight for us. So we carried on the work, with half of them holding spears from dawn until the stars appeared. So you have this ancient alarm system, really, that's going on. You blow the trumpet, people would gather to that spot and fight. But you'll notice here that the alarm is sounded and the people are to rally there. They're to gather to the place where the battle would happen. But they also said, our God will fight for us. So they're not just sitting there expecting God to rain down fire and brimstone on their enemies. They're prepared to actually fight. They're prepared to actually defend themselves. That's common sense. I hope you're prepared to defend yourself. Now listen, at any point, you can get caught off guard. That's true for any of us. You can be sitting in your house and be caught off guard, and that could be it for all of you. That could be it for your wives and your children or whatever. That can happen. We're not perceiving some imminent threat to our house at 24/7 where we're sitting around, carrying guns 24/7 and eating with one hand and having a weapon in our other. Like, we're not in that type of, this is a heightened situation where they're aware of potential incoming attacks. But I hope you're prepared, and I hope you're prepared to defend your family and our church family even. But anyway, they worked, they were prepared for battle, they had a plan, they trusted in the Lord, and those things can actually coexist. Where you can trust in God, and you can pray, and you can have a plan, and actually take action to defend yourself and your family. They're not opposing ideas. It's not like, so you have a choice. You can take action and defend yourself, defend your family and your wives and your children and your sons and your daughters. Or you can pray and see if God takes care of it. That it's not a one or another thing. It's a both thing. Our friend was completely deceived. Our friend was so far off when he said, if a guy came in shooting up the church, you just pray. You should have stronger faith. It's just like, you're way off here, buddy. This is not an either or thing. This is both. This is a both thing. You pray, and you prepare, and you be ready. Common sense stuff that we see actually in the book of Nehemiah. Really common sense stuff. But again, not everybody has common sense. So God wanted the city to have a wall, which was common sense. He wanted it to be protected, which was common sense. Nehemiah trusted in the Lord to protect him, but also prepared for an attack, which was common sense, and the people took action, which was common sense. And Nehemiah was right there on the front lines, ready from morning until evening, at all times, ready. And they even set guards in case the enemy attacked at night in verses 22 and 23. At that time I also said to the people, let each man with his servant spend the night within Jerusalem, so that they may be a guard for us by night and a laborer by day. So we're going to bring the people from the surrounding villages, we're going to bring them inside the city, and that's going to provide extra protection for us. So neither I, my brothers, my servants, nor the men of the guard who followed me, none of us removed our clothes. Each took his weapon even to the water. In other words, they were prepared at all times because of the imminent threat. They needed every hand on deck. They slept ready for battle at all times. And so in this passage, you really see some common sense stuff here. Common sense stuff that really kind of applies to the 21st century. It really does. We see the work continuing in spite of opposition. We see Sanballat and his people wanting to attack and murder the people of Jerusalem, but Nehemiah hears about it and warns the people and encourages the people and takes action to defend the city. And so for me, as I read this, how can I not see all the preparation work that came into defending the city? How could I not see that we also need to be prepared for Satan's attacks? Yeah, we need to pray. Absolutely. We need to trust in God. Absolutely. It's always a good thing. We should always communicate with the Lord and trust in Him. That's a given. It's not all we should do. We should act. We should take action. We should understand what God wants in His Word, be encouraged through His Word, be encouraged through the local church, but we should take action. You don't just sit back and do nothing. When Satan is working, you don't just sit back and do nothing and let Satan win either. Like as a pastor, I'll deal with that. When I see Satan's work, I expose it. I don't sit back and do nothing and say, God will figure it all out. I know that in the end, I know that God will handle all of it. But we're not going to just sit back and let Satan run rampant. We're going to take action. I'll expose what's going on. And I have no apologies about that type of stuff. We don't sit back and do nothing. We don't let Satan wreak havoc in our lives and in our churches. We act. We act on the basis of God's word. We act to protect God's people. We act to protect the truth. And what we also do, and this is as important as any of it, we continue the work. When Satan attacks, his purpose is to stop you from doing God's work. You continue God's work. And anytime God works, Satan works over time. But that only calls us to more faithfulness. You may have to change the way you do some things, but it calls you to more faithfulness. It calls you to more devotion, more commitment. It calls you to step up your efforts even more when Satan is coming at you. It calls you to persevere and to continue the work because Satan is trying to stop it. Don't let him stop it. And so you need to remain faithful to God's work, even double your efforts when needed, if and when Satan comes against you. And he will come against you. If you're doing God's work, he will come against you. Don't let him win. You pray, you trust in the Lord, you be prepared, and you take action. And you continue the work. And I see that general flow in Nehemiah, not just in this paragraph, in the entire book, but particularly in this paragraph. If you'd take your hymnals and turn to 397. Listen, if you're not sure you're saved, then